Taylor's sudden disappearance rocked the Forrester family, leaving behind more questions than answers. Ridge, Steffy, Thomas, and the entire family were left to grapple with the eerie reality that their beloved matriarch had vanished without a trace. At first, the disappearance was a mystery. There were no signs of foul play, no indication of where she might have gone or why. All that remained were vague clues that didn't seem to add up. Ridge, devastated and desperate, searched for any indication of where Taylor might be. Her phone was turned off, her car was gone, and the house had been left untouched, with no signs of struggle. It was as if Taylor had simply disappeared into thin air. Ridge's mind raced with questions. Was she in danger? Had something happened to her? Why would she leave without telling anyone, especially him? For days, Ridge tried to reach her, but his efforts were futile. The woman he once loved deeply and built a family with had seemingly disappeared from his life with no warning. As the hours stretched into days, his concern grew. There was no trace of her anywhere, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized there was something much darker at play than he had initially believed. When Steffy finally spoke to her father about Taylor's disappearance, it wasn't the comforting words Ridge had hoped for. Steffy, who had always been protective of her mother, offered a chilling theory. "Dad, she couldn't take it. She couldn't take seeing you risk your life to save Brooke. After everything that's happened, after all the pain we've all been through, how could you? I think Taylor left because she couldn't bear to watch you fall back into Brooke's orbit." Steffy's voice was thick with emotion as she tried to make sense of the chaos. Ridge's heart dropped. Could it be true? Had Taylor left because of him, because of his desperate actions to save Brooke after her near-death accident? He had never meant to hurt Taylor, but perhaps in his attempt to save Brooke, he had pushed Taylor further away than he realized. The guilt weighed heavily on him. But as Ridge tried to wrap his head around Steffy's words, there was still something that didn't sit right. Taylor wasn't someone to just run away without a fight. She had always been strong, always fought for what she believed in, and the woman he knew would never just vanish without leaving any explanation behind. There had to be more to this than just heartbreak over his actions. And as the investigation into her disappearance continued, Ridge would find that the truth was far darker than he could have imagined. As the days went by, Ridge's search intensified. The more he dug, the more unsettling clues began to surface. It wasn't just Taylor's emotional state that was concerning, it was the fact that Taylor had taken deliberate steps to vanish. Her departure wasn't a reaction to heartbreak, it was a calculated escape. Ridge was stunned to learn that Taylor had left the country, sneaking away without telling a single soul about her plans. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became that Taylor had been hiding something far deeper. She hadn't just left to escape the pain of seeing Ridge save Brooke. She had left because she feared the consequences of a secret she had been keeping for years, a secret so dark that she felt she had no choice but to disappear in order to keep it hidden. The truth slowly began to emerge through a series of cryptic messages and hidden documents that Ridge stumbled upon. It was a secret Taylor had carried with her for years, a secret she had tried to bury deep within herself. Taylor had been involved in a twisted and dark scheme. One that involved none other than Nick Marone. Ridge was shocked to discover that Taylor and Nick had a history together that went far beyond their past as casual friends. Years ago, before Taylor came to Los Angeles and met Ridge, she and Nick had been lovers in Europe. Their relationship had been intense, passionate, and filled with secrecy, but it was also deeply troubled. Taylor had eventually broken things off with Nick, leaving him behind in Europe as she moved on with her life. But Nick hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't let go. His return to Los Angeles wasn't just about rekindling a friendship with Brooke or trying to win her over, it was about something much darker. Taylor and Nick had secretly joined forces to orchestrate Brooke's accident. They had planned to push Brooke to the brink, to cause an accident so severe that it would lead to her death. It wasn't just an accident. It was a calculated attempt to remove Brooke from Ridge's life once and for all. Taylor had been afraid of what would happen if Ridge ever found out about her past with Nick, and so, in a desperate bid to protect her secret, she had worked with him to put her plan into motion. Taylor's intention wasn't just to hurt Brooke, it was to cover up her past, to bury the truth she feared would come to light. The plan had been to kill Brooke in the accident, making it look like a tragic, unforeseen event. But as Ridge's actions unfolded, the plan fell apart. Taylor had underestimated the lengths to which Ridge would go to save someone he loved. Ridge had saved Brooke, and in doing so, he had inadvertently ruined the twisted scheme Taylor had crafted. Brooke survived, and with her survival, the walls that Taylor had built around her dark secret began to crumble. The truth that Taylor had feared for so long was slowly starting to surface. Ridge was left reeling. His world, already in turmoil, was now completely shattered. The woman he had once trusted, the woman who had shared his children, his heart, had been working with Nick in a plot so dark it could have destroyed everything. Ridge had always known that Taylor had her share of pain and complexity, but he had never imagined that she was capable of such a betrayal. The realization cut deep. Not only had Taylor been hiding this dark secret, but she had been using it to manipulate the situation all along. As Ridge pieced together the events, he couldn't help but wonder, how could Taylor have done this to him? To Brooke? And most importantly, to herself? The woman who had once been a beacon of kindness and integrity was now a figure of deceit and manipulation. Ridge was faced with the painful reality that the woman he thought he knew was someone completely different. As the investigation continued, Steffy and Thomas were confronted with the painful truth as well. The realization that their mother, the woman who had always been their rock, had been capable of such betrayal left them shaken. They struggled to come to terms with the fact that Taylor had kept such a devastating secret from them for years. The image of their mother as a loving, selfless woman was now tainted by the knowledge of her dark past. The Forrester family was left reeling, unable to process the enormity of what had happened. The wounds were deep, and the healing would be long. Ridge, heartbroken and disillusioned, had to come to terms with the fact that Taylor's disappearance wasn't just a result of her emotional pain. It was a calculated escape from the truth, a truth that was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As the family struggled to cope with the fallout, they were left to question if they would ever be able to trust Taylor again. Would she return? And if so, what would she have to say for herself? Could the Forrester family ever heal from the darkness Taylor had hidden for so long, or had this secret torn them apart beyond repair? Only time would tell. The storm that had been quietly brewing for months suddenly erupted with the shocking revelation that Taylor Hayes, the beloved matriarch of the Forrester family, had been hiding a dark secret. Her involvement in a twisted plot to bring down Brooke Logan sent shockwaves through the entire Forrester family, destroying the fragile web of trust and love that had been painstakingly built over the years. At the heart of this chaos was the unthinkable partnership between Taylor and Nick Marone. The conspiracy they had orchestrated together was designed to eliminate Brooke from Ridge's life for good, but the plan was about to take a dark turn, one that neither Taylor nor Nick could have anticipated. For months, Taylor had been secretly working with Nick to carry out a plan so diabolical that it seemed almost unbelievable. Nick, who had long been a part of the Forrester family's tangled web of love, rivalry, and betrayal, had returned to Los Angeles under the guise of reconnecting with Brooke. In truth, Nick had no real interest in Brooke whatsoever. His return to town was motivated by a singular purpose: revenge. Nick's history with Taylor was complicated, to say the least. Years ago, before Taylor had moved to Los Angeles and become a part of the Forrester family, she and Nick had been involved in a passionate, secretive romance while they were both in Europe. Their relationship had been intense, filled with love and longing, but ultimately, Taylor had ended things. She had moved on from Nick, choosing to build a life in Los Angeles and eventually starting a family with Ridge. Nick, however, had never truly gotten over Taylor. His feelings for her lingered, unresolved and festering, and when he returned to town, it wasn't just to try and rekindle old flames with Brooke. Nick's heart was still tethered to Taylor, but more than that, he was driven by a desire to hurt those who had wronged him. When Taylor reached out to him, proposing a plan to get rid of Brooke once and for all, Nick saw it as an opportunity to finally get revenge on both Brooke and Ridge, while also keeping the woman he had never stopped loving close. Their plan was simple yet devastating. Taylor and Nick wanted to stage an accident that would result in Brooke's death. The idea was to eliminate Brooke from Ridge's life, allowing Taylor and Ridge to reunite without the constant shadow of Brooke's presence. They knew that Ridge's bond with Brooke was unshakable, but they believed that if Brooke were no longer alive, Ridge would be forced to turn back to Taylor. They also knew that Brooke's death would leave a massive void in the Forrester family, a void that would allow Taylor to step in and fill the gap left by her absence. They thought they were foolproof. Taylor had been planning this for months, and Nick's return to town had been perfectly timed to help carry out the final stages of the plot. The moment came when Brooke went to the beach for a seemingly innocent outing, but it was all part of Taylor and Nick's plan. They set the stage for the accident, knowing that the tide, the cliffs, and the isolated location would create the perfect conditions for disaster. It was supposed to be the end of Brooke. However, fate had other plans. As Brooke was about to plunge to her death, Ridge appeared out of nowhere, risking his own life to save hers. In a moment of sheer instinct, Ridge reached Brooke just in time, pulling her from the edge of the cliff and ensuring her survival. But Ridge's heroic action shattered everything. Taylor's carefully constructed plan fell apart, and in that moment, she realized that not only had her plot been thwarted, but the love of her life had once again chosen Brooke over her. Ridge's arrival was the final blow to Taylor's dream of reclaiming him. She had hoped that the tragic accident would bring Ridge back into her arms, but instead, it only reinforced his bond with Brooke. The chaos of the accident, the blood, the brokenness, and the sheer emotional toll were too much for Taylor to bear. She had never wanted it to go this far. She hadn't anticipated the consequences of the plan going awry, but now she was left with nothing. She had lost Ridge, lost herself, and destroyed the fragile relationship she had built with her family. Ridge, though deeply shaken by the near death of Brooke, had no idea of the betrayal that had unfolded right under his nose. The truth of Taylor's involvement in the plot to kill Brooke was hidden from him for now. But as the pieces of the puzzle slowly began to fall into place, Ridge's trust in Taylor would be shattered forever. Brooke, too, was left reeling. She had always known that there was a tension between Taylor and herself, but the revelation that Taylor had been working with Nick to end her life was beyond anything she could have imagined. The betrayal was unbearable, and Brooke found herself struggling with the question of whether she could ever trust Taylor again. Her life had been saved by Ridge's timely intervention, but the cost of that salvation was steep. Not only had she come face to face with the possibility of death, but she had also uncovered the dark truth about the woman who had once been a friend and ally. The Forrester family, already fraught with tension, was now torn apart by secrets and lies. Ridge, blinded by his own emotions and guilt over saving Brooke, couldn't fathom that Taylor, the woman he had once loved so deeply, could have orchestrated such a cold-blooded plan. Steffy and Thomas, who had always looked up to their mother, were also left in a state of shock. Their mother, the woman they had trusted and admired, had been behind a plot to murder someone, and not just anyone, but Brooke, their father's first love. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and as they pieced together the horrifying truth, they realized that their family might never be the same again. As for Nick, his return to town had been for vengeance, but in the end, he too found himself lost in the chaos he had helped create. The love he had once felt for Taylor was clouded by the dark path they had taken together. The plot to kill Brooke had left him morally bankrupt, and now, with the truth coming to light, Nick was left to face the consequences of his actions. It was a dramatic turn of events that would leave the Forrester family forever changed. Taylor, once a beacon of hope and strength for the family, was now a pariah, unable to escape the fallout of her terrible actions. Ridge, torn between his past and present, would have to confront the woman he thought he knew and decide whether he could ever forgive her. Brooke, having survived the attack and learned of Taylor's involvement, now found herself questioning everything about the woman who had once been her friend. Steffy and Thomas, now disillusioned, were left to pick up the pieces of their broken family, unsure of what the future would hold. The plan that had been designed to bring Taylor back into Ridge's arms had instead torn the Forrester family apart. It was a betrayal of the highest order, one that would take years, if ever, to heal. But as the truth came to light, the family was left to wonder if there was any hope of rebuilding what had been so ruthlessly shattered. Would Ridge ever be able to forgive Taylor for her role in the scheme? Could the Forrester family ever return to a semblance of peace? Or would the scars of this dark chapter haunt them forever? Only time would tell, but the consequences of Taylor's actions would reverberate through the Forrester family for years to come, leaving them with questions, regrets, and an uncertain future.